Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our monthly Fit at Work webinar. My name's Allie. I'm Director of Communications for Face It Together, and I'm joined here by Janelle, who will introduce herself shortly. Just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items before we dive in. So first, for anyone who's unfamiliar, Face It Together is an addiction wellness nonprofit. So we provide professional one-on-one peer coaching to those impacted by any alcohol or the drug addiction, including loved ones. So we're going to talk all about that today. Janelle is a loved one coach. She works with a lot of parents, but I'll put a pin in that because we're going to be talking about it a lot today. So if you have any questions about that, if you'd like to learn more about what we do, you can visit our website, wefaceit.org. During our webinar today, you can ask questions using the Q&A button. If you'd like, you can do that anonymously. And then lastly, I always like to mention that these webinars are a benefit to our Fit at Work program. And that's where we partner with employers to provide our peer coaching as a mental health benefit. So that is available at no cost to those employees and their family members. Excuse me. So if you're watching this, maybe you've seen our flyer in your break room or maybe in your onboarding packet. That means that your employer believes in this approach and they want you to be well. So we are here. If you need help, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let's dive in today. We're going to be talking about enabling, very big topic with loved ones. And there's going to be so much nuance to this conversation because every family is so different. But I'm so glad Janelle is here today. Kristen, another one of our team members, may be joining. She's our surprise guest. She's on the road, so if connection works, then she will join. But if not, Janelle and I are going to tackle it today. So Janelle, I would love it if you could just give a quick introduction and let folks know why you're here.
Absolutely. I love that phrase. Kristen's on the road,
Yes.
on the road. So, as Allie said, I'm Janelle. I'm a loved one coach. Um, by and large, that's probably the parents are probably the largest group of loved ones. There's
Mhm.
all different, there's grandmas, brothers, sisters, uncles, and parents,
Mhm.
siblings. So, but it seems like parents can carry some special kind of guilt
Mhm.
about where enabling is concerned. And again, I'm a loved one coach. I've been here for about 5 years. My 5-year anniversary is coming up. Can't believe it.
So exciting.
Yeah, I absolutely love what I do. And when I first started on this journey, probably 22 or 23 years ago now, one of the reasons that I'm a coach is because I want to be the person that I needed all those years ago but couldn't find. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you so much.
mhm.
So, big topic today, enabling. Let's maybe just start with what is enabling, like, and how do we at Face It Together distinguish between bad, maybe unhelpful enabling and
Mhm.
helpful enabling and why that's important.
Mhm. Yeah. So, um, I think you and I talked about this before, but uh, enabling traditionally means that I'm going to refer back to some of my notes that I took, but
Mm-hmm.
enabling traditionally means that um, it's about behaviors that parents may do. We're talking about parents today, I think,
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally allow the substance use problem to continue without consequences. That's traditionally what enabling means. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the examples that are often um, talked about or cited are covering up for someone's behavior, perhaps paying legal and financial consequences, bills for the person without seeing any change in them,
Mm-hmm.
and just making it easier for the substance use to continue. And the real idea behind that definition is that we're protecting someone from natural consequences and natural consequences of their behavior that's going to perhaps delay
Mm-hmm.
change in them. But if I may continue here, Allie, this is where the conversation really becomes oversimplified, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
harmful because not all helping is enabling, and not all
Hmm.
enabling is harmful.
Hmm.
So, um, the word enabling is a shame trigger for families. And
Yes.
I don't want to get ahead of myself, but um, it's about helping, instead of helping loved ones understand how to support recovery, the word enabling makes them feel guilty, makes them feel
Mm-hmm.
judged, makes them even feel like they're responsible for the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And probably most importantly, they're afraid to help at all.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it is such a, there's already so much shame and guilt around addiction anyway.
Mhm.
And then you throw these words in there. And by the way, if I'm channeling my inner Dave Janza, who's one of the founders of our loved one program and a former loved one coach, um, he always made this point that enabling in any other situation is a positive word.
Mhm.
But you throw it into the context of addiction, and it is like people run in the other direction because they don't want to be labeled an enabler.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, you kind of started us down this path already, Janelle, right? It stops people in their tracks, makes them feel more guilty than they already do. And so, in light of that, and we know that parents are feeling maybe feeling some of that shame. What do we want to say to that parent, maybe who's watching this and is worried about enabling or is just like feeling guilt in general?
Well, when parents first hear that word, and I sort of drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, on enabling. And when I first heard that word, it really sort of paralyzed me, can paralyze parents with
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty because it's like, if I help, am I enabling? If I
Mm-hmm.
don't help, am I abandoning my kid?
Mm-hmm.
And it just leaves that emotion just leaves parents feeling like there is no right answer. But the reality of that, I think, is, I'll use your word, a little more nuanced
Mm-hmm.
because supporting someone through substance use and recovery is not simply black and white. And that's what typically happens with enabling. It becomes a black and white situation. That is just not true
Mm-hmm.
because supporting someone is about learning, it's about adjusting, it's about responding to different stages of their recovery or different stages of change. And
Mm-hmm.
so um, there is such a thing as helpful support, and that's how I prefer to talk to the people that I coach about it,
Mm-hmm.
as well as for myself. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of thinking in terms of enabling versus not enabling, we or I like to encourage families to think about support as something that helps them move towards health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that could include so many things. And
Hmm.
it does move away from like the black or white, yes or no, hopefully for most folks. Why don't we talk about a couple of I think these are probably some pretty common scenarios that come up, the everyday kind of basic needs support questions that parents have, right? Giving money, providing rides. You and I have talked before about, you know, a child needing gas. Do you go fill their gas tank? um, so what do we want to say about those situations and how maybe parents should consider or kind of weigh the pros and cons of those kinds of support?
So, yeah, I have a good example for that of my son at one point. He was living with us and he was working, holding down his job, doing pretty well. And on his way to work one morning, he called me and said, "Hey, can you help me out with gas?" And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking in my head the reasons why I want to be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
What are the positives of it? And I thought, he is doing well. He's continuing to hold down a job, which is a big deal. And so I said, yeah, where are you at? I'll meet you there and we'll put gas in. And so we did. And a few weeks later, same phone call, but it was on a Saturday. And he said, "Hey, Mom, can you help me out with the gas again?" And I said, "Sure, where can I?" And I'm simplifying this, but where can I meet you at? I met him, and when I got there, there was three other people in his vehicle with him, and I
Mm,
basically said, "Not this time. You get one of those guys to help you." You know,
mm,
so right away, people would typically say, "Well, you were enabling him." You know, that first time. Well, I think we have to look at situations, each situation differently. We have to be flexible.
mhm,
As I said before, it definitely is not black and white.
mhm,
And I'll mention it again because I think it's an easy way for parents to um, kind of answer that question for themselves. Does this support or does this help move them towards health and responsibility, or does it
mm,
take away all of their accountability? You know?
mm, mhm,
So I think that kind of support can encourage responsibility both ways. I think it helps support their recovery efforts. Uh,
mhm,
and can even protect their safety at times.
mhm. And what about maybe the parent who, because we've talked about natural consequences a little bit,
Mhm.
and I could imagine that that impulse, it could be really strong to avoid those consequences, right? Like, um, and so how have you helped maybe loved one members kind of embrace that or um, just recognize the importance of that and that they can't always be the buffer of consequences?
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned this from not only through my own experience, but I've learned a lot from the addiction coaches too, that
Mm,
help me when we're talking about this, that they do need to feel some natural consequences at
hmm
times. And I can tell you without doubt that mine has, because there's been legal troubles, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I would help out with legal troubles, but after a certain amount of time, and I'm talking about years here,
hmm
I'm not willing to do that anymore. And
hmm
so it's not something I feel like I should be doing. And he's had to maybe not get bailed out when he wanted to get bailed out,
hmm
or he may not get his commissary paid for, things like that. So there
hmm
are definitely situations where they do have to feel those natural consequences, and it's hard. It's hard
hmm
for parents, but again, talking with um, specifically Shannon is who I was having this conversation with. She was talking about for what her story is, natural consequences were a big help. And
hmm
I say that loosely, use that loosely, but
A
it,
motivator, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. hmm
exactly. It was a motivator for her. So, um, I, again, I believe that natural consequences are a part of that. We can't always be the safe place, the soft landing for them, so to
hmm
speak. And I'll tell you that in coaching too, it's a point that you have to reach. It's not like that comes natural. And like I said,
Yeah.
it's very hard to do. And it's a point I think in the journey that probably every parent that I've coached gets there. And sometimes it takes longer than it
hmm
does for other people. But I definitely have experienced that. And recently, even with people that I've been coaching, it was really a tough for this mom to not provide this safe spot for her person to land. And
mm
she just recently said, you know what? I'm not helping him. I am not
mm
helping him in this situation. And for the first time in, a couple of years, she said, no, I'm holding this. And
mm
so proud
hmm
of her because I know that is hard fought for.
For sure. Yeah, that's so great. And we, boundaries inevitably are part of this conversation. We have done other webinars about boundaries to dive a little deeper because that is a whole other very big loved one topic that we might not be able to do justice to today. But um, I've kind of heard this as you've been talking, Janelle, and I think you mentioned right different stages of change, different stages of recovery for the person with addiction. But I've also heard you kind of talk about your shift as a loved one, like your maybe needs changed, your boundaries changed, what you were willing to do changed over time. Um, so I'm wondering like how that kind of manifested for you, how your approach changed, both as like your needs evolved and then as your son's um, kind of needs or stage of recovery changed.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually I've been getting this question a lot in the last few weeks.
Mm,
About, so this is how long my person has been in recovery. What's going through their head right now? Well, I don't really,
mm,
I'm not an addiction expert, but I know how I kind of handle things as time goes by. And, in the beginning, like 0 to 6 months, let's see. Actually, during maybe an easier way to explain it is during active use.
mm,
Focus is going to be more on safety. It's going to be on
yeah.
connection, and it's going to be on keeping those lines of communication open.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're in early recovery, they move into early recovery, the focus is really going to be more on encouragement,
Mm,
um, maybe some different structure, accountability, and those things may become more important. And then for more long-term recovery, the support's going to shift more towards helping them rebuild their life,
mm-hmm.
independence. I don't know if that's what you were asking, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's something that parents, we're constantly adapting to the
Mm-hmm.
different shifts that are happening because we say there's stages and you can move forward and then it may be a step back and then it's
Mm-hmm.
a forward and back. So we have to be, I think, like I said, constantly adapting and being flexible. Um, so and and that is not enabling,
Mm-hmm.
that is not enabling. It's being, I guess, responsive to a complex situation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, going back to, it's not black and white for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering too, I don't know if we've talked about this explicitly before, but I'm thinking about that left one who's been on this maybe years long journey, right? And they're learning these skills and um, they're evaluating where their child is in the addiction or recovery space. I don't even know how to phrase this question, but um, like, did you find in your journey, or do you find with your loved ones, like are there strategies where child reaches out, right? They call, um, and then instinct is to like give immediate answer or immediately go into action. And so I'm wondering if a skill you work on is like taking a beat and like really thinking that through, thinking a couple of steps ahead rather than like jumping right into doing mode.
Yeah,
Does that question
absolutely.
make sense?
Yep, it does. I know I've
Yeah.
been through that.
Yeah.
You know what? In the early stages, I was that person. I get that phone
Yeah.
call, I am boom. If it's 2:30 in the morning
Yeah.
or whatever the time was, and that kind of feeds into enabling too. But we don't know that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're trying to fix the problem. We're the
Hmm.
parents, right? We're trying to, or even if you're a spouse, you're trying to help. You're trying to help your person, fix this substance use issue because we don't understand it. We don't.
Hmm.
So in the early days, yeah, I would do that. But um, I'll fast forward till now. It is definitely something that when the question comes up or when a situation comes up, I'm thinking about how is this going to affect me?
Hmm.
Um, because I, as a loved one, have really learned the hard way how um, substance use disorder can take you down. And you have to be careful. There's different decisions all along the way. But yeah, I mean, I just didn't get there overnight. It's a lot of,
Right.
back and forth and up and down and so on. But you are right in that I really do take into consideration, take a beat, I think is what you said. before I actually do something anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably good for me. I know it's good for me, but I think it's good to think about them too and the
Mm-hmm.
consequences that they're facing at that time as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah. And what an amazing shift, right? How is this going to affect me first and foremost? I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, that is
That's
amazing.
tough. That's tough to say
Tough,
that
of course. Yeah.
because it's like, oh, you're worried about you. Well, yep, I am because I learned the
Yeah.
hard way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I am
Mm-hmm.
concerned about me because if I'm better, if I'm well, I'm making good decisions for them.
Yes.
I have so much more clarity about the
Yes.
situation. And that was something I definitely lacked in the early days. I mean, your head is so full and it's so emotional that it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to have that clarity. So taking that
Absolutely.
lead allows you to get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Janelle, you and I have talked before about kind of a case study, if you will, right, about balancing accountability, but also dignity, right, as a parent who's trying to help their child get
Mm-hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking about an example you've shared comparing someone maybe on um, a recovery journey from like cocaine, could be any drug, versus someone on kind of a weight loss journey, and
Yeah.
how someone on the weight loss journey, we are not um, grilling them. We're not asking for constant updates, but we do, I think we maybe have more of that tendency on the addiction situation. So I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about that um, and maybe, yeah, just how to balance that accountability and dignity at the same time.
Um, one of the first things, not one of the first things, but one of the things I learned along the way is that a person with substance use disorder does not want anything different than you and I want. They
Mm-hmm.
want to have a good place to live. They want to have a car. They want to have a job. They want to have good relationships. They want to be able to enjoy their lives. I mean, all the same things that we want, they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I have respect for that. And, when you talk about dignity, I have respect and dignity for that because they're no different. It's just that they've found a maladaptive way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always want to keep that. We've talked a little bit about shame, our own, but they definitely have shame too.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wouldn't, we use that example of someone on a weight loss journey, I would not be looking over their shoulder constantly. And I would not be saying, are you sure you want to eat that? You sure that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be good for you? Are you sure you want to go to that restaurant? You want to hang out with those people? Those kinds of things. Who, who would ask them that? I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
someone, but who would ask those questions?
Right, right.
So I want to make sure I think about that in the same context as I do for my son with substance use
Mm-hmm.
issues. I don't want to shame him. I know he carries enough of it himself. And I don't think me constantly looking over his shoulder doesn't mean I don't want to, but
Right.
constantly looking, you know, trying to build trust with him
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
And I want to share, I don't know what we got left for time, but I want to share a conversation that I had with him
Yeah.
maybe 6 or 8 months ago. He came home for lunch, and I don't remember what the conversation, how we got here, but it was, I don't know if he had asked me to do something or what it was, but it came down to, I don't think I can do that right now because my trust level just isn't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not like that response. And he, put his boots on, door slammed when he went out. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, for the next couple hours, I think I could have handled that better. Something we do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Revisiting conversations. I don't always recommend it, but it happens. Anyway, I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, I think I could have handled that better. And then so finally, I called him maybe 3 hours later and I said, I want to apologize for that. I think I could have handled it better. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, what are you talking about? And I said, that conversation over lunch. He goes, oh, I forgot that 20 minutes after I left the house, Mom. And so here I am stewing over it. So this is kind of a double lesson here.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I said, he goes, Mom, I know you don't, I want you to trust me immediately. We all do. We want trust right away. I get it. You don't
Mhm.
trust me. I understand that. I probably wouldn't either. And
Mhm.
so I wanted him to know that, this is why I said what I said, and I wanted to treat him like I would my best friend or something. Call him and
Mhm.
apologize and say, I think I could have handled that better.
Mhm.
The dignity is there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow, what a great, I mean, not, great moment isn't maybe how I want to say that, but like, what a good perspective to have kind of after that phone call. And
Mhm.
um,
And
yeah,
that's kudos to him too.
yeah,
He's learning things along the way too.
right, right. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Janelle. Every time we have one of these conversations, it's just full of so much good information. And I know for those watching, either live or on the recording, we are talking about some really big shifts here that are very difficult. We said that multiple times, easier said than done. And we're dealing with people, so it's never going to be, it's rarely going to be very cut and dry, right? There's going to be a lot of emotion, there's going to be a lot of nuance, but hopefully this is a good place to start, or just a different way to maybe be thinking about enabling some of the other concepts we talked about. Before we sign off, Janelle, anything else you wanted to mention? Any kind of final words of hope for parents?
Maybe a couple things.
Yeah.
When you're talking about enabling, you're not making these decisions. Most of them are made in an emotional during an emotional difficult time.
Yes.
Many times, that's the way those decisions are made. And um, you know, to I just think it's important to recognize that it's not after you've thought about it for a week, or this happens on the fly a lot of times. So all this stuff takes practice. There's skills that can be learned.
Mm-hmm.
And but for parents who are supporting someone, or if you are not a parent, you're a loved one supporting someone with substance use challenges, there's really something important you should know, and that is that you are not alone. There's a few things,
Mm-hmm.
you are not alone, because millions of parents walk this path. Millions of them
Mm-hmm.
do. And most all of them, if I think back on who I've been coaching, most all of them have the fear of doing something wrong all
Mm-hmm.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and walking with someone, supporting someone through addiction is not about finding the perfect response every time.
Right.
It's just about being able to stay connected, continuing to learn and adjusting as the journey unfolds.
Mm-hmm. And doing the best you can with what you have, right? We never want to blame loved ones or make them feel any more guilt than they already do, because there is so much of that. There's enough of that to go around already.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Janelle. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today, watching the recording. If you have any other questions for us, if you'd want to meet with a coach like Janelle, you can do so at wefaceit together.org. We've got a green button in the corner, you can't miss it, that says get started, and you can fill out that form and we will be in touch. But thank you all again and have a great rest of your day.